This is the June 8th Easton Conservation Commission meeting. We obviously doing this by Zoom. The meeting is being recorded for audio and video. Please understand that. Also understand, due to the state of emergency initiated March 12th by Governor Baker, we are using Zoom technology in response to the public health emergency. Applicants will be given the ability to assume remote control of their hearings and make their own presentations if necessary. Otherwise, I'll bring up the information. Also, please note on April 6th, the Commission delegated signature authority to the chair, Stefan Coutinho, and/or Andrea Langhauser for all decisions issued during the duration of the emergency. So,
I will bring.
Yeah, Carol's here. So,
all right, and the
first hearing we have is 11 Lullaby Lane, and this is a request for determination of applicability for some proposed landscaping. And I will bring up the plans.
And Joel, would you like me to find your report?
Yes, please, because I'm watching what's going on right now, and I'm going, yeah, okay, I'm good with Blackboard, but Zoom, no.
I can bring up the plans too, Andrew, if I need
the
to.
report is on the.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh.
Yep, that's first. I think that's the first slide.
Yeah, that's. Yep. Thank you, Rory. You got it.
Okay, super. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Yeah, I'm Joel Davis at 11 Lullaby Lane, and some of the things we're trying to figure out how to do. We've been here for a little over 18 months, and we started, taking a look at what's going on in the back, and we've had a survey done. We've cleared out to do the what we discovered was a conditional approval of that we've met what the Easton Commission has said was good for the wetlands conservation area, certificate of compliance. We had a partial. I was out there and I discovered quite a bit of plastics, so on and so forth. So if you see on the next slide, okay, okay. So when I was out there starting to work on that and decided, all right, I saw a lot of plastic, so on and so forth, and pulled those out and got that taken care of, and then had a survey done and found out that our lawn actually moves over another 8 to 10 feet to some area that had actually been worked. So in order to try and get that back and actually have something that has some aesthetics to it, what I'm asking for is to be able to take that area, I've removed most of the garden. I have not tilled it up yet, but so there are still things growing out there, but a garden from prior to my arrival here. Thank you. That's the great photo to show. For what we're looking at doing is we've had the survey done. The survey extends out quite a bit. And we want to take that and till it up and turn that all back, from west to the 50-foot buffer line, turn that back into conservation area, and then put native trees. I've talked with Sean Flynn a bit about this, so as he's talked about different things going on. He's the one who said, make sure you do anything you want to do, talk to the Easton Commission. And then, so I've gone out to Blueview to talk about what is native, what needs to be done, for native trees. So, the thought is to get a fence in, because since the work to the north has been done. I mean, that house, Muzi bought the house like that. It's got a lawn that goes down to that one marker that I have, so that it doesn't look strange. I said, I want to put something architectural there to show a good delineation, but turn everything back into that wetlands buffer area. So the design, the thought is to put a white picket fence down that line, along the tree line, and then take everything from the 50-foot buffer line, till it, and bring that back to native. We've been out to Blueview. We've talked with Kevin out at Blueview to find out what are the right native trees to put in. So on that slide, you see what we've decided to put in, which is a couple of maples, some serviceberry and blueberry in that area. And but in order to still make that aesthetic thing, was to put some type of a 5-foot white picket fence all the way down to that line, so that that doesn't show a strange, this looks weird line, that all of a sudden we go from wetlands area to worked lawn. So that's what we're looking at doing here. So I think that's really the last slide that I have on here to show. Okay, thank you for putting that up, because if I don't do that architectural design, what you see is this right here, which just really looks strange. That you go from this wetlands area to a worked area with nothing that delineates. So in order to do something that has very minimal impact, we've said, all right, maybe just a white picket fence to show that line, and then rework that area to bring it back into wetlands area, wetlands buffer area compliance.
Okay. So the first question I have is, so how many linear feet of fence are we talking about? So
That's a heck of a question. It's about 35 feet. I'm going to say 35 feet. I haven't measured that. Because when we originally had a fence person come out, I measured to the 50-foot buffer line, and then I realized that no, that's not my property line. So we, when we were looking at putting in a fence for the back lawn, my brother-in-law has a dog. We said, all right, we got to get a fence in for the dog. He's a 100-pound Rottweiler, for crying out loud. So once we started looking at putting the fence in for him is when I realized, wait, the property line's off, and started looking at that. So I'm gonna sit there and say, to answer the question, 35 feet down to the marker that's further towards the wetlands.
So is the intention to fence in the entire backyard? I guess that's my underlying question.
Yeah, the intent is to fence in the backyard for the dog.
And if I may, the backyard, he means it goes all the way down to the stone wall at the neighbor's property, and then comes back up to the lawn area. Does it intend to include the replanting area, Joel?
Yeah, the reason to do that is that white line was to bring it back up to the 50-foot buffer, was to show the delineation to the, by looking at this screen, the delineation to the right, to show a delineation with the neighbor.
Okay, my apologies. You're saying the white line is the line of the fence.
Yeah, that's what that's an approximation of the line of the fence. And then that comes back up all the way over to the left of the screen is a 50-foot buffer mark. That's about midway in our backyard. And so this brings the fence back up to the 50-foot buffer mark there.
Okay. And how much further to the left would the fence go? Would go all the way to your property line?
Yeah, it'll go to the property line. That's in the workable area. No longer in the 50-foot buffer. that was why I didn't include that in the pictures. I said, okay, that's on the other side of the 50-foot buffer.
Okay. I think I have a good idea of what's going on here. Anybody have any questions for Joel?
Sure. This is Joel. This is Carol Lundeen. How are you tonight?
I'm feeling fine, man.
Good. Thank you. So I have a question about I appreciate that you've done your homework with selected native plantings. I think they're definitely native plants, and I wonder if you would be open to some alternatives that would be much harder working for our native pollinators.
I would be. I've actually thought more about the birds, but my stepfather was a huge beekeeper, so pollinators are an awesome thing.
Okay, terrific. Well, it's interesting because pollinators are a huge benefit to birds, because I think of pollinators as being bees and other of that type of animal, and also butterflies and moths. And caterpillars, which are part of the life cycle of butterflies and moths, are an extremely important food for birds when they're raising their young. And that's where I'm looking to kind of really leverage the space you have available to put in the most hardworking native plants possible. Those would include any native oak, any native willow. These are for trees I'm giving you right now. And by the way, pussy willows are not native willows.
Okay.
And the third one would be black cherry for trees. And for shrub type plantings would be a shrubby St. John's wort. And for herbaceous, the goldenrods and asters would be fantastic. By far, the best keystone species.
Okay. The oak, I definitely thought about it. We've got 2 pin oaks that are right on the edge on the other to the left. There's the autumn olive is right there to the left. That is inside the report. It says, all right, I've talked with Sean that when I've looked at the Audubon Society, that okay, the autumn oak or the autumn olive. And so that right to the left of that is a pin oak that is about maybe 35 feet high. It's a beautiful pin oak. We've got 4 of them on a house that we're still trying to sell in Virginia. That a matter of fact, my wife and I were actually talking about a pin oak for the yard. So I'm all about the oak. The black cherry, I haven't really looked at the black cherry. I haven't seen that, but I don't know enough about it. And the St. John's wort, that's something that we had actually looked at too already. So that's not anything that's, that says, oh, no, why would I want that? So of course, yeah. So I'd like to have that list if I could of what you're talking.
I'd be happy to get that along to you.
Okay.
Yep. I mean, the blueberry and the serviceberry are wonderful plants. They make berries that birds eat when it's not breeding season. But as far as enabling all kinds of animals, including birds, to reproduce, to hope that they could maintain their population when so many bird and other animal populations are in great decline, I would really root for you to go with the most hardworking natives possible. So that's great. Pin oaks are great. I do have to ask about your autumn olive and how in love with you are you with that?
The reason it's still there is because the smell from it is pretty unique. But once I got the vines, all of that multifloral rose out of there, it really looks out of place with all of the other things. So we actually once we got there, we said, as my wife loves it, it's got a really good smell to it, but we're just saying that's out of place. Let's put something else in there instead, since that isn't invasive. The Audubon Society said, yeah, we really don't like those. They get confused with the the other invasive, the Russian olive. So we said, all right, it wouldn't break our heart to make that go away if we put something else. And that's when we looked at that red oak, or red maple rather.
Right. Yeah, that sounds fantastic. And it seems like a lot of oaks would do well. You have a lot of white pines there. So, it's as a transitional landscape, as softwoods transition to hardwoods, we have a lot of white pine oak forests. So adding some pines, adding oaks rather, would be fantastic.
Yeah, that's something we've already talked about, but right to the like I said, to the left of that autumn olive that you see on the left, there is a 35 foot pin oak that's doing wonderfully. After we got those vines out of the leaves, out of the limbs.
Yeah, don't you love how the branches of that oak, their habit of reaching down?
Well, right now right now they're really coming back. It's amazing. I wish I had a picture of what everything looks like right now, because after pulling those vines out of those limbs, those trees all just got so much happier.
So Carol, do you think that this is something that we can provide the applicant with some suggestions, and that maybe give Andrea administrative approval to okay and work with the applicant on? Is that something you can work with Andrea on?
That's a great idea. I'm glad you're suggesting it.
Great. Anybody else have any other comments, John or Michael?
I got nothing. That's a really cool project. Can't wait to see when it's done.
Oh.
Yeah, I guess my only question is, what's the soil like in that area right now?
Right now, it seems rich. There's a lot of rock in it. One of the things I was waiting for was for today's meeting, because the garden that I got rid of, there's still stuff in that garden.
Right.
So that was one of the things that I had mentioned to Andrea about. Once I get this approved, I need to get back there and just till that up and get rid of the jalapenos, get rid of the whatever it was that was growing back. I found tags for jalapenos. I found tags for parsley. I found tags for a lot of things back there.
Yeah, I guess my only question would be what kind of indicator plants to plant there. Whether if it gets real wet, you want to tend to lean towards wetter plants that would grow in those kind of hydrophytic conditions. Otherwise, you'd want to tend to more upland conditions. So, depends on what the typical area looks like there.
And I did talk to Sean about that, or not Sean, Kevin out at Blueview, that in the area that you see pretty much in the middle of the picture, where where I've got to till everything up to the striated area, that gets more damp than the areas that go a little more to the left.
Yep.
So I was telling him, I said, I want something that can take some water.
Yeah.
And that's when he was pointing me to the maple on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's a facultative species, which means it grows 50% in wetlands and 50% in uplands. So it's a good divider kind of species.
And that's where Kevin was pointing me to that area. He said, that the serviceberry would go good there, and he said maples is what he told me.
Right. Yeah, you'd want something that could potentially withstand a little bit more water during certain seasons, and then something that could also tolerate dry.
Yeah. And that's how I described that area to him, is that I don't want anything that's going to get die waterlogged.
Okay.
Yep. I don't mean to belabor this. This is Carol. Tilling can be very destructive to soil structure, and if what you're dealing with is jalapenos, I wonder, you're going to be, when you till it, you're going to bring a lot of the seed bank that's there up to the surface.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm going to rake that out.
Right, but I'm saying there's a whole, there are seeds under there from the woods that are going to start growing there. So tilling is not a best practice.
All right.
I would suggest, but if you could deal with, is it what's growing there now, if anything?
Well, yeah, about 10 feet of that is grass.
Uh-huh.
There was what had been made a lawn. So I've got to take that lawn out.
Yep.
Is one of the things I was sitting there going, I got lawn and I got a former garden.
Yep.
I need to get that out and rake and get this thing looking even, is what my point was on that, is what my thought process was.
Right.
Is get this thing looking like it's all the same. And that was to till and use, I've got 4 different rakes that to pull different things out, different vines, different roots, different, because there's a lot of root system that I found in there when I was pulling everything out. There were root systems for the multiflora rose that was just, that stuff is all over the place.
Yep, it's a beast. And, you know, and it will continue to come up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whatever shards of root you leave behind that are viable at all, those are going to keep coming up whether you till or not.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just wanted to mention that.
Okay.
So any other comments, any public comment for 11 Lullaby Lane? Just raise your hand, indicate some way. Okay, seeing none. Any concerns from any of the commission members about issuing a negative determination on this? So I'm going to make a motion to issue a negative determination of applicability with the condition that the applicant work with Andrea and Carol on a appropriate plantings for the area, and also just as you are continuing, I know that you're going to be a good steward here, but obviously no dumping in the wetlands or the buffer zone.
Matter of fact, I'm still clearing that. I am finding things the further back I go. So, but those are being pulled out.
Thomas, second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Lundy night.
Spady, aye.
Thomas, aye.
Caulfield's aye. Okay, that's good. We're all set.
All right, super. I just want to confirm that a negative on applicability means that with working with Andrea and Carol, that means I can start thinking about how I'm going to do this, right?
Correct. Absolutely, yes.
Okay. I just wanted to double check the language.
I know it's one of those things where a negative is good in this case.
All right, super. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, next up is 42 Randall Street, which is a abbreviated notice of resource area delineation.
Eric Dias is the project engineer.
Good evening, everyone.
Eric, do we need anybody else, or?
I believe I've got Brad Holmes in the audience somewhere. Do you see him out there?
I see Brad.
Yeah, Brad did the delineation on this. It'd be good if you could sit in with us.
I'm promoting you to panelist, Brad.
Oh, there he is.
I think he's muted right now, but he should be able to unmute.
There you go.
I'm good.
Hey, Brad, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Excellent, excellent.
So, Eric, you or Brad, do you want to drive the bus here, or you want to?
Yeah. Can I share my screen and bring up the plan?
I'll make you a co-host for the moment.
Excellent. And if I do that, share that, and then I think, can you all see that?
Yes, we can.
Fantastic. Yep. Fantastic. Okay, so this is 42 Randall Street. We are sandwiched between Randall Street up here. Alderwood Drive is this little cul-de-sac right here with about 4 or 5 houses on it. And then if we go to the second page, you'll see Summer Street is way down on the opposite side. This is a case where the GIS delineation is actually woefully undersized for what the amount of BBW that's actually on the site. So we started this quite some time ago. I believe Brad did his original delineation back in, I want to say January or February. We've obviously identified quite a bit of BBW on the site, which is denoted by the A series coming through here all the way around. And then if you come down, there's another piece of the C series delineation down here that goes out to Summer Street. And then this chunk that comes back up this way is the B series boundary. So we basically got a piece of upland that's up here at the corner of Randall and Alderwood. And then there's another piece of upland down in the opposite corner of the site here, and a little bit maybe along Summer Street. So the site is pretty wet. During the original delineation, we identified a small intermittent stream system up here in the northern portion of the site within the A series wetland. That is just a discharge from a culvert that runs under Randall Street, and it gets to this point here at the end of the flagging series and just kind of peters out to nothing. Well, let me finish with streams first. During the site walk that we had with LEC about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, we identified another intermittent stream channel that's actually fed by a culvert that's down here. This looks, if you can see the area over the culvert, is like a historic cart path almost. And again, this intermittent stream channel just peters out to nothing. In the middle of the big A and B series BBW on site, we did identify 2 potential vernal pools that are probably certifiable, although we're outside of the season for that. And we have delineated them and shown the 100-foot bylaw boundary, and then the 100-foot offset to that bylaw boundary. And we did correct, per Andrea's comments earlier today, we corrected the 50-foot no disturb to match the 50-foot offset of the bylaw boundary of those 2 vernal pools. There was, while we were on site for the site walk, some discussion of let me see if I can move this guy, of a little isolated wetland that's actually off our site over here. So we did pick that up. We showed it as approximate because it's off the property, and we certainly didn't want to be delineating anything on anybody else's property. And all it does is cast a very little bit of a 100-foot buffer zone on this eastern portion of the property here. So that is about it for delineations in resource areas. We did get, I understand that we have a consultant report from LEC, which I think is probably favorable. And I did see the staff report that came through about an hour ago, maybe a little better than that now. And again, I think it's got a favorable recommendation, and it does indicate that the boundary of all of the wetland resource areas are shown and shown adequately. And the commission could choose to issue the ORAD if they wanted to.
So I think LEC, you picked up all of their comments as far as I understood it. Andrea, you want to comment on LEC's report and whether it concurs with what's going on the revised ANRAD?
Yes, the LEC was on the site with myself, Brad, and Eric. And so he was aware of these lines. And then in the report that he submitted today, he found that this was mutually agreeable. He did, in addition to the other things that have been mentioned, I just can't help myself. Streams don't peter out to nothing when they go into wetlands, Eric. They become wetlands.
Oh, well, they're less channelized, let's say it that way.
But what LEC picked up on is that there's a mapped potential vernal pool at 65 Summer, which is adjacent to the property. And whether it's right, or do you think this one, do you think it might be within?
65 Summer is right here.
Right.
The closest we are to that, I can probably pull a distance off of Google, but I think this is easily more than 100 or 200 feet.
Perfect. Okay.
So I don't think we need to show it, but if the commission feels strongly about it and it's on a plan somewhere that I can pick it up, we can add it.
No, what LEC was suggesting was that if the site were to go to a development plan, that you should be aware of it at that time.
Sure, that makes sense. Sure.
So other than that, I think my property, my plans, my report has all of the other things that you spoke of. The type of streams, we're not running water now. I think Brad and Mark Manganello both agreed on the classification type as best guessed, 2s and 3s.
That's correct.
But they were more careful than that. If you were to go to a decision tonight, I would identify the type 2 as being within the A series and the type 3 being within the C series. Is that correct, Brad?
I believe so. I had it written in my addendum. I just have to pull that up.
Yeah, that's how I got it
Yep.
on my report.
Okay, yes, great.
Yeah. In fact, I've got that right here. And we say.
Next page.
Within the A series, actually, no, we have it backwards. Within the A series, we're a type 3 stream. And then within the C series, we're a type 2 stream.
That's because you actually saw water in the C in portions?
Correct. As you move down into the wetland, it was holding water. No flow really, more stagnant, but certainly holding water.
And that one, just to be clear, so this stream here in the A series would be a type 2. And then moving down to the second sheet, this stream here in the C series would be the type, no, excuse me, this is the type 2 in the C series. Type 3 is up here in the A series.
That's what I thought best met the classifications.
I had it backward that time.
Any questions from the commission? Any public comment? Just raise your hand or give me some indication. Okay, seeing none. Andrea, I'm inclined to issue the ORAD tonight. Is there any reason for us not to proceed?
No.
Okay. So I make a motion to issue the ORAD for 42 Randall Street. Please noting only the wetlands located on the project site are confirmed. The boundary on the southerly PVP is only estimated. Is that correct, Andrea?
That right where the finger is pointing, we given the amount of dense vegetation, Brad picked up the north side and the south side, but not
Fair
the
enough.
sides that are interior to the wetland.
And the local resource areas are the state regulated BVWs, and noting as well as the 2 potential vernal pools. Noting also that the intermittent streams is a type 3 in the A series and a type 2 in the C series.
If I could give Brad the credit of writing that a little more carefully in the decision, I would just say that the interior boundaries are estimated.
The interior boundaries are estimated.
Right. If you can see on the plan, it's right where he's pointing is a dashed line.
I can make
Understood.
that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's
Yep.
that area here and that area here. So it's just the interior
Yep.
boundaries of it.
Fair enough.
I second that.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Lundin, aye.
Spady, aye.
Thomas, I.
Caulfield's aye. Okay,
Great.
Thank you
Thank you all very much.
thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Good night.
Thank you.
Next up is 23 Douglas Drive.
I'm gonna let the promoting Sarah Weber to panelist, and I'm unmuting her. And Sarah, you have to turn on your own video if you can.
There you are. So Sarah, do you want me to display your plan, or do you want to take care of that yourself? I'll leave it up
If
to
you don't mind, because I have no idea how to do it.
No problem.
Thank you.
He's a real treasure to have around.
Definitely.
Okay.
I just want to point out while you're doing that, that the abutter notifications have been posted on this, as well as the other notices of intent. It's just that in this case, I didn't put it in my staff report.
Okay.
We're free to go.
So Sarah, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you want to do?
Sure. So we're looking to install a 28-foot above ground pool in the existing yard space. We kind of picked out an area that was free of all trees, so we didn't have to remove any trees. However, it is within the buffer zone. Part of the pool will kind of cross over into that buffer zone. So we're just looking for approval to be able to install the pool.
What Sarah is using as a baseline is a piece of the septic plan that was done for a 2015 decision. TOB is identifying a top of bank, which I believe is Beaver Brook, running along the side property line. And then in the back, you'll see both top of bank and BVW. So those lines looked correct to me. I should say that what's not shown on this plan is a fence line that separates the wood line from the lawn area. And it acts as a natural buffer, as a natural permanent marker. It is in a floodplain coming down the brook. I didn't see the elevation on the flood zone, but it maps out to include the full driveway. Probably comes halfway to the pool area as a mapped line. Like I said, I don't have an elevation. The Beaver Brook has really defined banks, pretty high defined banks, and there's a lot of water in it now. They're just not moving. There's the pool area. I think your son got taller. You can almost see the fence line in the back.
Yep.
There's a slight slope down to the BVW, not to the bank.
So it's a pretty flat backyard. It's about a 1 or 2 foot over the course of the backyard. Think any questions from the commission? Let someone else start off if they have any questions.
I have a question. This is John. So this above ground pool is not going to constitute a structure, right?
What does that mean?
It can.
It's
pervious bottom.
Okay. I guess my question then is, what's the Board of Health requirements for being away from the septic system?
She's 21 feet off of her house line. I don't know if you spoke to the Board of Health.
It's 10 feet from the septic.
Is
so
it?
I'm supposed to be 10 feet from the septic, and
okay. Right,
I think I'm 14 actually.
Yeah, that's fine. I just didn't know what the distance was. I don't know.
And for an in-ground pool, it's like way bigger, but for an above ground pool, it's 10 feet.
Okay. All right. Then I'm all set.
Cool.
Great. This is Carol Lundeen. I've seen an above ground pool explode before, all the water run into my yard. And I would like to think that the ones that are on offer these days are better than the ones that my neighbor had. But I do have a question about what kind of sanitation system that you think your pool will have.
Yep. So I've talked to Andrea about this, as well as Rory, and they both had kind of mentioned the saltwater pool system. So I actually called the pool place that I'm getting the pool from, and I've done some research. And to be honest with you, I kind of appreciate the saltwater pool system. So it's going to have an earth filter, which is the one that kind of really finely filters everything. So it's the cleanest pool filter. So you'll have the cleanest water. And then on top of it, I actually would like to proceed with the saltwater pool just for the benefits on hair, skin, the fact that it's natural, better on the eyes. I have children, as you can see in some of my photos, because they are everywhere I go. So we're looking actually to do the saltwater pool.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
So I wonder, salt water is well known for killing plants.
Okay.
So I'm concerned about that salt water getting to, off your lawn and killing plants downhill.
Okay.
So I wonder if you have looked into a UV system.
Is that where the rocks are dug out around the pool? Is that what that means?
I don't know about rocks around pools.
Oh, a UV system, like
ultraviolet. Yep, I was reading the other day, the town of Sudbury has just approved an above ground pool, similar situation where they are very much behind using UV systems because they don't have the risk of the salt.
So I didn't look into it. I'm not sure what the added cost would be. In all honesty, if it's like really still expensive because it's still so new, I don't know if we could even afford a UV pool system. I could definitely do some more research to see if that was something that would be beneficial. Like I said, I'm not familiar with it. I don't really know anything about it.
I recognize my staff reports came in late. I was waiting for some last minute information. I did suggest with Ms. Weber that she install a splash guard around the perimeter of the pool in stone, which is something that the commission has recommended in the past, as well as speaking to her about the filters, which led to the level of research she's done already. This house also was constructed back in '77, so the previously disturbed lawn area is what it is.
Yeah. So help me see if I have my memory right. The vast majority of groundwater moves within the top 12 inches of the soil. Is that right?
I don't know.
Anybody that ring a bell?
No, I don't even know that either.
Yeah. So that would be part of my concern about a saltwater system if it were to collapse. I'm looking for a little insurance if it's available and it's not going to croak your budget.
I don't think we've ever talked about UV system. In fact, I think it's relatively a new system. I did a quick Google on it to understand. In a commercial system, it would be $100,000. So
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think we can incur
Sorry.
that.
That's a commercial. It's in a big, pool, but I can't. I mean, it's probably still. I would think $5,000 in a pool this size. So that would be my only concern. So.
Yeah, I'm for the pool, so I think it's a fine deal.
So I think the one other question that I might have is how are they expecting to get the equipment into the backyard? I assume they're going to have to use some sort of bobcat or something to level the ground.
Yep. So he's going to use a skid loader, from what I gathered from him, and they'll come in through. You were there. The double gates on the side. It's wide enough, so they'll come straight through there. They don't have to go anywhere near the septic or any other side of the yard. It'll be straight shot to the pool, dig it out, and a straight shot out. And actually, what they're digging up, I've asked them to leave behind the soil and the stuff there, the grass there, because I want to kind of spread it and just level off the rest of like what's going to be around it. I'd like to just save what they're digging up. No reason to log it out. It's good grass.
Yeah, I would just recommend that you tell them to put down some impact plates or some barriers, so that way it's less work that you have to take care of later with the grass.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good point, John. The soil compaction that would go on there.
Well, it just also saves the landowner from having to deal with all the rutting later issues.
Yep. Yep, all of that.
Okay.
I think that the other thing is, I think we probably do want to have at least a 12-inch, stone splash guard around the pool. So anything that gets out of the pool, it would be absorbed by that splash guard, not run off into the lawn.
Okay.
I think that also during construction, we're going to want to see a straw wattle at the base of your fence, at the base of that slope, probably the back part of that fence, to make sure that no erosion will get into the BVW or the stream.
Okay.
And I'm not sure. I think the only other thing that was probably noted was on the other side of the fence, there's some yard debris. It's probably just a yard pile with some, leaves and sticks and probably some grass clippings if you cut your grass. I didn't notice if there was grass clippings, but that probably really shouldn't be there. So you want to stop doing that because you're close to the BVW.
Yeah, Andrea and I had that conversation too. So I've actually picked out a spot that's not, that she pointed out wasn't part of the wetland. So it'll be in the corner off to the other side, kind of near my neighbor's fence line.
Great.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, this is Carol Lundeen. I've never owned an above ground pool, and I'm curious, what is the year-round maintenance of that like? Like, what happens in winter? Does it like freeze solid like a block, or do you empty it every year?
I'm not sure yet, because this is my first pool too. I think from experience, they winterize it somehow. So I know some of the water is let out, or you stop running the filter, so the water kind of dissipates below the filter line. I'm unsure of the whole process. I know that once the pool,
you leave the water in the pool and you cover it.
Yeah.
You obviously decrease it a little bit so that it gets below the water lines, and then you clear the water lines of any water. But then you leave the water in the pool. In an above ground pool, typically they put some air bubbles so that the cover can sort of not sit on the water, and help with that. So it depends on how cold it gets. It may freeze solid if it gets really cold for a long period of time, since it is above ground as opposed to below ground. But they're meant to do that in this climate. So
good to know.
Any other questions from the commission? Any public comment? Okay, so I'm going to make a motion. I assume you want to close the hearing and then we can issue a determination. Sarah, I assume you want us to do that, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to make a motion to close the hearing, issue a permit for work and order conditions for 23 Douglas Road for installation of above ground pool, noting that we want an 8-inch straw wattle along the fence at the back of the stream inside of the property. Construction access is going to be through the double gate on the side of the home. You're going to put down some impact pads to protect your property. We're going to use saltwater filtration, and you're going to have a 12-inch stone splash pad around the perimeter of the pool. Additionally, we don't want to see any discharge of the pool water through backwashing or anything else into the BVW or brook. And Also, prohibit any dumping in the wetlands or stream bank or any of the, and maintain that native vegetation behind the fence line.
Thomas, second.
All those in favor?
Lundin, aye.
Spadey, aye.
Thomas, aye.
Caulfield's aye. Okay, that's it.
That's it? Okay,
That's it.
thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
We'll issue the decision over the next few days and we'll mail it to you. It then needs to be recorded.
So how long until they could start the work to install the pool? Give or take.
Technically, there's 21 days for the commission to issue a decision. It never takes that long.
Okay.
It'll probably be issued within the week. There's a 10-day appeal period from the DEP. We could send them an email and ask if they plan to intervene. There's been nobody that presented tonight that could also appeal. So you'd be working at risk within that last 10 days.
Okay.
So a week or so.
Okay. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Sarah.
Fuck. Enjoy the pool.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is 64 Gilmore.
I'm bringing Peter Lyons up. And I'm bringing his plan view up as well. Now, Peter, we need to unmute you. There you go.
What's up? You hear me?
Hi, Peter.
Hi, how you doing, guys? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Peter.
All right.
And he has given us proof of a butter notification.
Great. So, Peter, you want me to display plans or you want to do it?
I think I can share them on a separate screen. I'm just trying to pull it up at the moment.
Okay.
I'll make you
if we
co-host. That might make it easier.
Sure. Let's try that.
Now you should see at the base, you should see a
Yep, I
banner
got-
that says share screen.
Yep. How about that?
Very good.
Okay, I'll start in on a close-up of the plan and then I can zoom out and move around as needed. So we all set?
All set.
For the record, Peter Lyons with Collins Engineering Group, representing the homeowner here. It's a septic repair on an existing 5-bedroom house at the end of Gilmore Road. We are contending with wetlands that wrap around the property, starting at the southern lot line and going around the back, basically paralleling the north lot line as well. Preliminary, sorry, I'm getting mixed up here. So what we're proposing is eliminating the existing components, which are a septic tank behind the deck and a leaching field to the side of the house. Reroute the plumbing and come up high, which will allow us to avoid a pump system. The proposed system will be slightly elevated in the side yard, about a foot or two higher at the house than existing grade, and sloping down on the southern portion about 2.5, 3 feet to the existing grade at the tree line. We do have to do some clearing into the tree line just because of the setbacks required to the house. Poor soils out here, it does end up being, you can see the leaching field is about the size of the house, which is never a great sign. So we're contending, if I can just move over here, we're contending with slow perk rates and silty loamy sands. So we have a very slow perk rate. Let's see, panning back over here. So to protect the resource area, we've provided erosion control, starting at the deck and wrapping around the entire project, including the grading and tree clearing associated with the system. Out in the front yard, as far away from the resource area as possible, we've proposed dewatering pit as well as soil stockpile areas. That's going to work well for access too. They can, kind of use it as a staging area to get the stuff out of there. There's some vegetation they will probably be cutting into up near the house. I don't know what the vegetation is. Looks like there's one tree and then more just ornamental bushes around the edge of the house. There's a couple air conditioners we're contending with also. So we're hoping to come out right behind an existing retaining wall with the new line. So it's kind of a tight one. Couple quick dimensions. We are as close as 42 feet to the resource with our erosion control. The proposed leaching field is 70 feet off of flag 6.
Peter, excuse me, this is Carol Lundeen.
The 50 line cuts right through the back here. So basically we're sandwiched between the wetlands and the property lines and the house. So really, this is one of those situations. It's the only place we can put it, so we did the best with what we have. We've proposed conservation posts around the entire project, a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Looks like 8 locations total. Those are all more or less along the existing tree line, edge along. Try not to make you too dizzy, but I can move around the plan. We do show erosion control details as well as dewatering pit details, as well as our common wetland land notes. Keep the site clean. DEP file number to be on site. Contact numbers to be provided. All the basic stuff, I guess. If there's any questions or concerns from the commission, I will be happy to address them.
Carol, since you seem to have a question, Carol?
I did. I was suddenly hearing some background noise. I was wondering where that might be coming from. I was having a hard time hearing, but it was on my end.
There's no noise.
I'm hearing you as well.
Say again?
Actually,
we're having a hard time hearing you.
Okay. Let's see if I can work on that.
I don't. I've been out at the site and it's relatively level. And like you said, I think you're doing the best with what you've got. This project has already started. Is that true?
That's correct. It's actually pretty much finished. I got called to do an inspection tomorrow. So this is a rush repair. There was, break.
Yeah, so for the commission's benefit, this is the one we issued the emergency cert on. Couple. So they had been pumping it every 2 weeks. So any questions from the commission? Any questions, comments from the public?
Carol may want to, let's see if I can get Carol to use the chat function. Can you type in your questions, Carol?
Right, I don't have any. Where do I find the chat? Oh, chat.
CQ. Do you see QA?
I can hear Carol a little bit. I think it'd be better than chat. Carol, there.
Yep, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. Well, that's better than nothing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you have a comment?
I don't. Thank you.
Okay. So, seeing none, do you want us to close, Peter?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I make a motion to close and issue a permit for work and order conditions for 64 Gilmore. Let me just see. With the recommendations as noted in the staff report.
Which, Peter, for your
Spadia second.
benefit, is the recommendations noted on the plan. Collins Engineering has gotten very good at putting our requirements right on the plan, which makes it a lot easier to get them to the contractor.
Beautiful.
So Spadia, we got a second from Spadia.
Yep.
All those in favor?
Lundin, aye.
Spady, aye.
Thomas, aye.
Colfels, aye.
Good luck, Peter.
Thanks. I'm down for the next one too, so I'm not going far.
All right.
So 42 Caroline Road. This is an NOI for another septic.
Correct. Ready whenever you guys are.
Just give us 1 second. We lost Carol, so let's see if we can give her a minute to get back on here. I assume we have abutter notifications on this.
Yes, they were posted.
Okay.
You know, Peter, when we go, when we stop going to remote meetings, if you want to continue to do that, that'd be terrific. And we'd have them.
Oh,
We won't have to, then we won't have to scan them ourselves.
yep, sure. I don't do them. They do them in the office, so we can do that.
Tell them we appreciate it.
We just need you to advocate on our behalf, Peter.
Yeah, can you be
shall.
the staple for all engineers here in this area? Sharon would
my best.
appreciate it too. Thank you.
Okay. Since we still have a quorum, I think we should proceed here. So, Peter, you're up.
Alrighty. Again, Peter with Collins Engineering, representing the homeowner at 42 Caroline Road. Septic repair on an existing 4-bedroom home. We have a drainage way in the rear of the property and with its associated wetland line to the northeastern corner of our lot. The flow comes from the wetland and travels south through the drainage way. We did a couple test holes in the front of the yard, plan being to stay as far away from the drainage way as possible. We encountered ledge at the shown depths, so we did not have.
Peter, do we have these plans? I don't. Am I not seeing the plans? I'm still seeing 64 Gilmore.
Hold on, bear with me.
There we go.
Did it switch? Okay, here we go.
It's
Right.
finally switched. Sorry about that.
Okay. Yep. I'm seeing it on my screen. So, so start over quickly. A drainage way on the rear of the property, coming from a wetland to the north. We did test holes in the front yard. We hit ledge pretty shallow, so we didn't have the material to site the system. We're also, dealing with the utilities, overhead wires on the right side, but really the big thing is the ledge in the front yard. So we're forced to go, as you can see, we kind of did test pits all over the place. We ended up finding some soils to the right side of the house, and I just wanted to look at the soil logs. So about 4 or 5 feet and you get into a better loamy material, you still end up with a very poor perk rate. So another real big system. Sorry to keep skipping around on you, but what we're doing is doing a new septic tank to a pump chamber in the front of the house and a force main under the existing driveway to a 38 by 59 pressure dose leaching bed. So this one's pretty substantial. This is actually bigger than the house footprint. So with high groundwater out here, we will have a pretty good mound in the side yard. Couple trees got to come down to accommodate the new leaching area and the grading. There's an existing propane tank that's got to be moved. So it's kind of a mess, you know. We got a pool that we're freezed up against the backyard. Most of the work is being done in existing lawn, except for the western edge, or the southern edge of the leaching field, the tanks. There's really no going to creating changes in the front of the yard. What else? Erosion control around the whole project with our standard notes for that, shown somewhere on the plan. Over here, straw wattles, dewatering, pit details, conservation posts of the project. What else? I don't know. I think that's about it. Any questions on this one?
You also have silt socks protecting your the catch basins in the town road.
That is correct. Yep.
And as in most of your projects now, you're making sure you sweep the streets.
Yep. Those are all included in our standard notes down in the bottom of the plan.
So I guess the one question that comes up is that there's been a lot of clearing in the buffer zone and in the wetlands in the backside, and it must have been inadvertent. I don't think it was your guys digging anything up. I think it was. I want to let the record. Carol, is that you on?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to let the record note that Carol has rejoined us at this time. That there's been some, removal of vegetation in those areas. So we're going to have to propose something to reestablish that area.
Okay. Yep, we did receive the staff report. It was a concern from the commission. So if we could just clarify, the specific area that was noticed, and I guess how we want to mitigate that. Ideally, if that's something that we could incorporate into the order for this project, just for the sake of time and to keep things rolling along.
Yep.
But yeah, whatever the commission has to say.
So what I found, Peter, was that the grubbing extended down to the blue flag labeled Drainage Way 3, and then went up on a diagonal toward the pool, reaching about where your permanent marker is, not quite as far as the permanent marker by the in-ground pool. And then it went over to the shed area. And so that it almost took a U shape out of the wooded area.
Like in this area here.
Yes. And then just a little bit farther, and then a little farther to the north to about there. And then over to the shed, so that the shed was kind of filled out. Yeah, there you go. There you go. That's the area. Okay,
sure. Yeah, I guess, I don't know, however you want to specify that.
So, Andrea, do you have specific numbers of vegetation as well as seed mix we want to put down?
I would say clusters. Off the top of my head, Carol can speak to this, or John. I would say clusters of 3 shrubs, 6 feet on center, and then putting a native seed mix across the base for the entire area. So maybe in that area, maybe 6 clusters of 3. And from the native plant list that Carol and I will review prior to, not just blueberries, Peter, use at least 2 or 3 types.
All right. Okay.
Do we know what kind of species are out there right now?
There was some
I am not sure.
It was kind of cleared.
Okay.
Any comments from the commission?
Yeah, this is Carol Lundeen. Andrea, you're suggesting shrubs. What about small trees?
The tree cover is pretty dense. I thought that perhaps the existing trees would end up taking over, spreading out a little bit more. It's not the area. The width is like no more than 25 feet.
Right, and there are lots and lots of trees and shrubs and herbaceous perennials that will grow in shade. That's why I'm asking.
I'm sure that Peter would pick any three you offered.
Okay, can we do that after the meeting?
That's up to you
Ready
guys.
to write it down.
What's that?
He was ready to write it down.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Peter was ready to write it down, so Andrea was sort of hoping you could tell him exactly.
Oh, I see.
Tell the homeowner what they needed to do.
Right. Okay. Well, I understand this concept of keystone species, where there are about 5% of native plant genera host 75% of local butterfly and moth species, and they have a disproportionately large effect on the abundance and diversity of other species. So I need time to get this together.
Perfect.
Okay. Okay, we can defer it. I was just sort of conveying what Andrea said. So any other comments from the commission?
Sure. Thank you.
Any comments from the public? So seeing none, Peter, do you want to close?
Yes, we would like to close, please.
So I'd like to make a motion to close the hearing and issue a permit for work and order conditions for 42 Caroline Road, noting that there must be a restoration planting plan with 6 clusters of 3 shrubs each, 6 feet on center, along with a base of native seed mix for ground cover. The shrubs will be determined with approval from Commissioner Lundeen and Andrea Langhauser. And obviously no dumping in the wetlands, and they need to maintain the native vegetation behind the permanent markers that are there. And I think also make sure that the replanting has to have at least a 75% cover of the area, and so there must be monitoring included.
Thomas, second.
I would like. Sorry, this is Carol. I'd like to tweak that if I may. Rather than specifying shrubs, I would like to keep it open to all types of native plants.
Okay, so amended?
Yes.
Do I have a second on the amendment?
Spady, a second.
All those in favor with the amendment?
Lundeen, aye.
Spady, aye.
Thomas, aye.
Caulfield's aye. Okay. We're done.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Peter.
That is all. Thank you, guys. I hope that's all I got for you.
Okay.
Oh, you'll be back. We know you will.
Yeah, hopefully. All right. See you guys. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye-bye. So next up, we have a continued hearing with 14 Morse Road. This is a notice of intent for a new single-family dwelling.
I'm bringing Bob Rogers up.
Here we are. Thank you, Andrea. Bob Rogers with GAF Engineering, representing Morse Farm Realty this evening. I think Jeff Cutter.
Yes, I see him. I'll promote him up as well.
Okay.
Okay, do you want me to bring up plans, or you want to
So
do it, Bob?
we haven't made any changes to the, if you could just bring up the site plan, we haven't changed it since the initial public hearing 2 weeks ago. Our direction from the commission at that time was for me to draft a waiver letter in accordance with the bylaw. That's not us. There we are. So that's our site plan as revised from the initial staff report. And so we went through at the last public hearing, and there was an issue of, because we have a pervious driveway being crushed stone, and we have a single family dwelling with a roof infiltration system. But so we're in an ACEC, and we were asked to document the public interest benefit of this project, which I did in a letter dated June 3rd. Andrea and I also had a conversation earlier today. At the last hearing, I guess I questioned the impact of our location in terms of the bordering land subject to flooding. And so I guess I was asking Andrea for a clarification today, but I don't, in section 503.23 B2, so this is the standard of review in an ACEC, but the section does not include bordering land subject to flooding as one of the resource areas that has special significance. So it's got vernal pool, bank, vegetated wetland, land under the water, but it does not list bordering land subject to flooding. But be that as it may, I did provide the response you were looking for in terms of the economic, well, the positive benefit to this project is to the welfare of the citizens in the form of an economic benefit. All the things that short-term and long-term go into production of a single-family home, the establishment of another residence in your community. So we had no plan changes, but we did provide the documentation that the commission asked for at the last hearing.
So the couple of issues that we raised at the last meeting, and we'll probably just condition them in the decision as far as protecting the trees, because they got filled up the base of those trees. So we'll want to get that just conditioned. Probably we don't want to see those trees die after you've saved them. Andrea, any thoughts on protecting the backside where they've filled in the part that's going to the bank? It was well established to me. I wasn't seeing any erosion and been there for months. So any thoughts from anybody on the commission about making a condition to address that, the fill they put on the backside that goes down that steep embankment?
He does have the post and rail fence shown
Right.
as the limit of work. If it is a very steep bank, and you know that it's actually a former burrow pit for the cranberry operations. If you're not seeing any erosion over this time of year, then I would perhaps recommend you seed it with native cover, and and once the post and rail fence is in there, that should become a no disturb zone. Put the medallions on the post and rail fence. But I obviously commissioners have any recommendations?
No, I agree with Andrea. I think the stabilization of the bank is definitely something that could help.
We're fine with it. We're fine with that being a condition, as well as the work to remove the fill from around the base of those trees.
Okay, any other comments from the commission?
No, I have nothing to add to that. That's a great plan and good call, Andrea, for sure.
Right, that sounds fun. Did we, is there a question about native vegetation going in?
I don't think it has come up. I don't think it's on the plan. I don't think we've discussed it.
No, we have the septic system in the house. We have our stockpile area where we're happy to preserve the trees that are right along the bank. We do want some yard area for the residents. There's not a buyer at present. If we were to any additional, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Bob.
Just to say, any additional plantings, I guess, would be along those sidelines, the property sidelines. We do, the post and rail fence is fine for a limit of work and really safety for small children, but we want to preserve the view to the pond.
Yeah, of course, it's beautiful back there. Yeah. Any public comment on 14 Morse Road? Just raise your hand or indicate us in some way. Okay, seeing none, would you like to close, Bob?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so make a motion to close and issue a permit for work and order conditions for 14 Morse Road. Just give me 1 second.
On page 13 of 23 for the conditions in the staff report.
Yep. Noting the recommendations in the staff report, wetland medallions will be installed on the post and rail fence, maintained as a permanent marker. You're going to use washed gravel on the driveway. Is that correct?
We're calling for crushed stone, which is more, it's better than the washed gravel. So
okay, crushed stone for the detail. We're going to create tree wells along the mature pines on the property. That is to be done this season. I don't want to see that delayed. And we're also going to put down some seed to stabilize that fill on the top of the embankment. Andrea, there's a note here about restoring the stone wall.
Along the front of the house, along the front of the street.
Okay,
I'm sorry, it's one of my pet issues.
Yeah, stone wall will be restored along the roadway prior to issuance of certificate of occupancy.
Thomas, second.
All those in favor?
Lundin, aye.
Spady, aye.
Thomas, aye.
Caulfield's aye.
thank you all very much.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Mr. Rogers. Appreciate it.
Have a great night.
Thank you.
You
Bye-bye. Okay, so next up is 7 Glen Road.
I'm bringing Scott Faria up to panelist. With him is Wetlands Guy, Dave Gordon, I assume. And Jennette Tighe is the applicant, bringing her up. And Kristen Coe is the one who's going to be getting the house, bringing her up. Now that they're there, I probably need to unmute Scott. Wetlands Guy?
Yep, I think I did.
Okay. Scott, why don't you tell us where we are now?
Okay, guys, thanks. After our last meeting, we had a couple of issues left to resolve that came up. The first one, we had our swale shown on the northerly side of the driveway, but we did not show the bioretention areas that we had previously. So we have put the bioretention area back where it was before, kind of at the end of Glen Road Extension, right near the new driveway for the new house. And in addition to that, we've added a second smaller bioretention area, kind of where the Glen Road Extension takes a little bit of a bend to the left. So we added those two bioretention areas. And really the biggest issue we had that came up at the meeting was discussion about the existing trees that are out there. So David and Jennette went out there and flagged up all the trees. I went out and located them. We put them on this plan that you folks are looking at now. And it turns out that we have 41 trees within the buffer zone on the plan. And out of those 41 existing trees, we are able to keep 16 of the trees, and we're taking down 25 of the trees. And if you look at the document that was submitted along with the plan and the waiver request, the tree assessment, I believe on the third page, it kind of has a little bit of a color illustration as to which trees are staying and which trees are going. The green trees being removed, the reddish trees are the ones that are to stay. So we've kind of made an attempt to save as many. As I said at the last meeting, the applicant Jennette and her daughter Kristen, who is ultimately going to be the homeowner, really would like it if they didn't have to cut down any trees. They really want the privacy. I don't think Kristen wants her mother looking into her windows all the time. So they want to keep as many of the trees as they can. So looking at the design, that's really what we looked at. We tried to do as best a job as we could on that. So that was really the biggest issue. The other outstanding item was in discussing the waiver request and the public benefit to the project and to the granting of the waiver to allow work in the 50-foot. And we kind of looked back and forth at that again at the last meeting. And I think at the very end, I forget exactly if it was Andrea or one of the commission members, but somebody brought up the fact that perhaps a donation to the commission to fix the Conservation Commission signs in town might be a suitable gift. So we've included that in our waiver request, that we would make that gift for the granting of the waiver. So really, I think that is a quick hit on the changes we've made.
So I think that one, I do appreciate that you taking our feedback from the last meeting and incorporating them into this plan. I like the fact that we have the bioretention basins returned back to the side of the roadway, the new roadway, as well as the swale. So I think that's going to give us the benefit that we were looking for there of treating that runoff.
Right.
And so I do appreciate that. The detail on the tree analysis, I think you gave us everything we asked for, and more probably. So I do appreciate that. And so the waiver request, I think that the only thing that I'd like to see in the waiver request is for us to agree what the amount would be to the signs. I mean, they vary somewhere $1,200 or $1,500 on average to replace this sign. I think we had agreed we'd replace the one that's closest to the property, so that it would have a more direct impact even to the applicants themselves, so they could see the fruits of their contribution. So I think that the Monty's Pond sign. So I think if we can just agree what that number is, so we can include that in the decision, that would be fine. So
could I possibly just hand it over to Jennette just so she can just talk to you about it. Ultimately, I don't want to speak for her on on a money part of things.
Sure.
I'm not sure if
Sure.
she's up live. There she is.
She is.
I
Yeah.
am. Hi, Scott. Yes, I am. Sure. No, we're definitely open. I tried to investigate the cost of signs, but I really didn't get far. So, thought I would just put it on our letter that we're willing to make a donation, but thought we could chat about what the amount should be and how
Right.
much those signs are. So,
Yeah. So the series of signs that we've undertaken a year ago, and then we're undergoing right now, it's about $1,500 each sign to replace them. So, and we use a specific vendor that we use the design on, so that we get a consistent view throughout the the town. So
Yeah.
it's $1,200 to
Okay.
$1,500 is the number. So you tell me what you're comfortable with, and we'll go from there.
we can just land at 1,500 and that will just settle that if that works. Okay.
Works perfectly fine for. I just want to get us to a number so that the commissioners all understand what we're doing here. So.
Okay.
Sorry, my one screen of people is on my left side over here, so I'm looking at you really on the screen, but here I am over here. So.
Oh, I see. Okay.
You can actually see that, Rory. You know that, right?
Well, I know, but I'm sharing my screen too, so I'm really,
Scott, you were upside down there for a minute.
Oh boy. Sorry. I'm trying not to touch anything.
So, commissioners, anybody else have any comments?
Sure, this is Carol Lundeen. I've been thinking about this for whatever, since the last hearing. And I'm concerned about the lifetime value of the ecosystem services of the area that will be altered. It seems to me like it has a much greater value than the number of signs that would be provided by the applicant. I think we need to look far into the future to address the public benefit that, or what the state regulation, the state, law, the act, and the town bylaws are about. They're really about the health, safety, and welfare of the public interest. And I just don't see how the solution of providing signs or money for signs meets that overriding public benefit.
The only response I would have on that, Mr. Chairman, is again, I guess what we're asking for as far as the waiver to work in the 50, that isn't new construction or virgin ground. It's an existing driveway that we're replacing in the same location with a new driveway and adding some stormwater management to it that isn't there currently. So I think it's a little bit different than some cases where you're just giving us a waiver to work in the 50 on brand new construction. The waiver is for really an existing use in that 50-foot buffer zone that we're trying to improve, both with the new roadway and with the stormwater benefits that we've proposed. So I think that's just a little bit different as opposed to a brand new virgin lot with new construction.
So I think that is an important point to consider here, is that the waiver is for the roadway, a portion of the roadway that is in the 50-foot no disturb zone. That's what the waiver portion is for here. The waiver does not actually include the construction that's happening on the house itself. Right. So that's actually in the outer 50. They moved the house. Remember, they reconstructed the house so we could get it out of that inner 50 and get it actually further. They actually work with us to move it further away from the actually no disturb zone. They actually moved it about 25 feet from what I remember. So
That's correct.
Right. Yep. So my other concerns are other wetland values. I mean, I really appreciate this tree report, and it mostly addresses carbon dioxide, stormwater runoff, rainfall intercepts, carbon monoxide, ozone, nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, particulate matter, and lifetime CO2 of carbon. What I don't see is anything having to do with wildlife or wildlife habitat impacts. I don't see about pollution filtering. Those are just some of the things that I'm thinking of right now. And in addition to that, we have the bit about you have to build a subdivision road in order to get a second house here. So it's kind of like now it's a road to a house that was never there. So while the tree report is useful, and I know that there are different ways for different situations for people of different perspectives to interpret the bylaw and regulations in a way that suits their arguments. I am concerned about reconstructing a road or, repairing what have you, that is so close to such a sensitive area.
Again, I understand that, and I think reconstructing the roadway is providing a benefit to that sensitive area you spoke about. Right now, it's a driveway in disrepair that has no stormwater management to it at all, and we're going to repair it and provide stormwater management. So I think that's that's the benefit that we're providing to that sensitive area that you spoke about.
And any other comments from commissioners?
I have some. Mike, do you have any? Do you want to go first?
No, you can go. You're fine.
All right. I guess my inkling on this is, they're going to be, remodeling the road, and it's going to be an overall improvement. So I'm okay with that. With regards to wildlife habitat, I don't know if they're actually impacting any resource areas directly, are they? With this project?
Just the buffer zones, no.
Just the buffer zone, right?
Right.
Okay. Yeah, like I was saying last meeting, is that there has to be a clear, disturbance of resource area for us to request a wildlife habitat study.
So for a burden of proof for a permit of work under normal circumstances, the applicant has the burden of proof. In a waiver situation, the burden of proof is not just a preponderance of the evidence, but evidence beyond doubt or uncertainty that the impact shall have no adverse effects upon any of the bylaw and wetland values.
But I think the waiver is for the roadway, not the home. So, and I think they're reconstructing the roadway in the same area that it was constructed previously. So I don't think there's going to be wildlife impact in that particular area where they're reconstructing the roadway. And in fact, I believe that the situation will be improved from the existing conditions. We're talking about runoff treatment. We're talking about slanting the roadway away from the wetlands, the sensitive wetlands that you're in the buffer zone on, the no disturb zone. So I think that from the sense that the waiver is concerned, I believe in my opinion, they've met an adequate burden of proof to show that they aren't impacting the wetland resources for the waiver.
Rory, what proof is that for each of our values?
I don't think they need to go into in-depth. I don't think they need to do a wildlife analysis to reconstruct the roadway. I don't believe that's a level of proof that's necessary for reconstructing the driveway into the roadway that's being done there. I don't think that's at all necessary. I'm not quite sure what impacts we think are happening when we're reconstructing an existing impervious driveway that's in disrepair to a better condition where we have runoff being constructed. I think it speaks for itself.
Okay, so is the material that will be used for the surface of the new driveway, what's that material?
I assume they're using impervious asphalt.
That's correct.
Okay, and so why is that better than impervious?
Why is it better impervious? They don't have a pervious surface. They don't have a pervious surface now. They have an impervious surface now.
Right. So a pervious
they don't
surface
have to make it. They don't have to make it better. They have to show that the work isn't going to make it worse. It isn't if they were putting in a brand new roadway, we'd be having a different conversation. But in my opinion on this, that replacing an impervious driveway with an impervious roadway that is in better condition, better constructed, with runoff treatment is an improvement over the existing conditions.
Okay.
If we were to put in pervious surface, would it be even a greater improvement? Perhaps we'd have that discussion, but I don't believe that's the threshold they need to get to.
Okay, so let me put out this question. When new pavement goes down, if you're driving down a highway or a local road and we have new pavement going down, you know what that stuff smells like? That's petrochemicals in there. And after it's laid down and the big rolling machine comes and squishes it down so it's nice and firm, and then it rains, if you were to collect rainwater that came off a freshly laid down road, would you drink that? Do frogs want to swim in that? The salamanders want to, that, to me, that's an impact right there. And without proof, credible evidence that's without doubt or uncertainty, I want to know about that.
Right. Well, I think, your point about whatever petroleum comes off of the roadway, that's the difference between what's there now, which is nothing, and what's there after our construction, which is a grass swale and 2 bioretention areas. So to answer your question, yeah, at the end of the bioretention area, I'll drink that water or swim in that. It's going to filter through a 500-foot long grass swale. So yeah, at that point, the water is the runoff from those chemicals that you're speaking of, yeah, that water's pretty clean once it goes through a 500-foot long grass swale and 2 bioretention areas. Right now, you've got no treatment of that water. We're providing 500 feet of treatment in two methods, with a swale and 2 bioretention areas. So I think that in itself is the perfect reason to grant the waiver. We're making it much better than it is now.
Okay, so thank you. So tell me, what are the impacts of the construction?
I mean, I guess I don't know. I don't think there are any impacts. The driveway's there already. It's going to be essentially at the same grade, except for tipping it. As you look at the roadway from the right to the left, there's very little earthwork going on. So I would say there's really no impacts from the construction.
So you're saying all the various machines that will be required will have no impact?
I mean, I don't
know what impact.
I'm gonna interrupt here right now, and I'm gonna ask the chair to talk on this a little bit more, because I think we're getting off topic a little bit.
to be honest, I understand the point that Carol's trying to make. I don't agree with it. And we continue down this road. But I believe that the applicant, from my stand, we can make a motion and we can, simply, and determine whether or not we agree that we're going to approve this permit or not. I believe that the applicant has, done what we've asked them to do. They've improved the situation related to the roadway. The roadway would be in better conditions. The construction, they're going to protect the limit of work in the area to minimize and eliminate any impact on the wetlands themselves. They've requested a waiver to work in the no disturb zone, and I believe that from where I stand, they've met the burden for us to approve that waiver.
And Rory, I'm just going to add another little sentence in there, is that it's the onus on the applicant to propose a project to the least extent practicable, which means that they have, obviously they're doing the best they possibly can to promote this project. And, is there going to be some impacts during construction within the buffer? Yes, but that's part of the project. And that's how this is why we need a permit for this work, is because there is going to be work within the buffer zone to do the work that they need to do. They're going to have all the measures and methods in place to kind of deter any sort of, surface water, contaminants, anything when they're doing the construction to go to these resource areas. And then once the work is done, hopefully they construct it in a way where naturally the course of the surface water is going to flow to these bioretention swales. Water is going to get filtered out, and then it's going to be clean water at the end. That's what engineers are here for. And that's kind of what I believe Mr. Scott Faria has proposed for this project. So I'm in agreement with you, Rory, on this one.
Any other comments? Any public comment on 7 Glen Road? I'm sorry, Mike, did you want to say something, Mike?
No, I'm fine with the project myself. I think that they did a great job revising it to what our needs were, so I'm okay with it.
Okay, seeing no public comment, Scott, would you like to close?
Yes, please.
So I'm going to make a motion to close the hearing for 7 Glen Road and issue a permit for work and order conditions for 7 Glen Road. Just looking through the recommendations on the
Page 18 of 23.
Yeah, I'm reading through them now. Permanent markers will be installed along the 50-foot buffer zone to the BVW. No dumping in the wetlands should be a perpetual condition. When the existing septic system needs repair, it shall be located on the associated parcel as far from the wetland resource area as able.
Yep.
And what's the comment about driveway shall be removed and completely reconstructed to subdivision standards? That's the way it is in the plan, right?
That's the way it is on the plan.
Okay. The one comment, two other comments about the waiver. One is we've agreed that the amount to contribute to the conservation sign project is $1,500, and that just understand that the waiver it's stated as a driveway. The waiver is for the roadway in the no disturb zone. I just want to make that clear that I understood the difference between the two, even though it was written as driveway, it is for the roadway.
Thank you.
Which is what we're talking about here. Do I have a second?
Spady, a second.
All those in favor? Mike,
Spady, aye.
Thomas, aye.
Paul Fells, aye. Those against?
Lundy, nay.
Thank you. Final vote 3-1. Thank you. You've got
Okay.
your project.
Thank you, folks. Thanks for all your
Scott.
time.
Take care.
Appreciate you working
Appreciate
with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Maybe.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Say thank you.
Okay, so on to, we have some certificate of compliance requests here. 19 Lullaby Lane is the first one that is up.
19 is 2 doors down from number 11, which we were speaking of at the beginning of the night. The partial certificate was issued for the house in November of 2018. At the time, they hadn't constructed, they hadn't planted the 6 shrubs in the 50-foot no disturb zone. Those that got planted were rather small, so small that the new owner weed whacked them down with the other herbs that were growing higher and taller. And so it's hard to find them right now. That being said, the slope is stabilized. I did speak to the landowner, who I do not see in the attendees, about the possibility of replanting that area with other native vegetation, and suggested maybe should want to put that forward as a request to be included in the certificate, but that request didn't come forward. So the area stabilized. I know the plants were put in, and I know they were whacked back. I would say
I know from my own view. Yeah, I remember this original property, and the plants were actually planted, but they were tiny, and they were in the middle of the native vegetation. They cleared little spots like this big, dumped a plant in there, and you could see how they would have been just taken down when they were trying to clear the rest of the plants that are growing there, which they consider to be weeds, right? So, I mean, it's pretty much down to nothing now. But I couldn't find it. I mean, Andrea is a better plant identifier than I am, so I couldn't tell you which one was the actual plants.
I found one.
I'm shocked you just found one.
So from my viewpoint, we've got a couple of things to do. I mean, the plants were meant to sort of stabilize the area, give some replication of what's going on. I think we either have to make the decision to move along on this one and ask the applicant to take some action on, like his neighbor down the street did, or tell him to come in and we're not issuing the certificate of compliance until those plants are in and doing well. So we make the choice. Any thoughts on this?
I say we wait until they're starting to live and get on going, and then we give it to them.
I have to let you know that the landowner believes that it was the developer's responsibility to take care of this. And so the new landowners aren't taking any real responsibility for this. It was something that was supposed to be settled before the house was sold.
Well, I agree with that, but that's between him and the original landowner. That was for them to put something into escrow or whatever they did. That isn't between us.
Right, but
that's not our issue. I mean, what's that?
The plants were planted. We have to speak about sizes when I do these reviews of administrative approvals. I'm gonna make sure I get sizes on the plants from now on.
So is this house is it sold now, or is it looking to get a certificate?
They've been there about a year.
Okay.
They've been there about a year.
All right. I mean, I'd like to see those plants in.
Okay, so just let's take sort of a litmus test here, because I don't want to necessarily deny the certificate of compliance. I want them I want to continue this. I don't want them to have to, refile type of thing. So I think that we heard from Mike. He wants plants. John wants plants. Carol, your thoughts?
I want plants. Yep.
Okay. So I think that we've got 4 commissioners that are here tonight that would want the plants where they were supposed to be before we issue a certificate of compliance. So if you could communicate that to the homeowner, as unfortunate the situation that he's in with the builder, that's not between us and the homeowner. So that's between him and the builder.
So at the next meeting, he should give us an affirmative, I'm doing it or I'm not doing it.
Yes, and then we can make our decision.
Okay.
And the sooner he puts those plants in, the better they have a chance to really grow this season.
Right. She did express an interest, so we may get it done.
Okay. So we're gonna. Was there any public comment on 19 Lullaby? Okay, and 15 Lullaby Lane, certificate of compliance.
No problems at all. The even though it says 19, I did 15. Okay, I didn't make it in here, but it's the house in between Mr. Davis's RDA for landscaping and this one. The grass is well established up to the permanent markers, and the house is outside of the 100-foot. It's very straightforward. It's a complete certificate request, as I would recommend it be as granted.
So Andrea, I think that second 19 Lullaby is actually 15.
Yep, that's right.
Okay, thank you. The DEP numbers are different, and I do say 15 in there. So yeah, it's again, there's a special condition 3 to allow mowing of previously disturbed sections of the inner 50-foot no more than once a year, which basically is what 19 is doing.
Okay. Any questions on this? Any public comment on 15 Lullaby Lane? Seeing none, I'll make a motion to issue a certificate of compliance for 15 Lullaby Lane, noting that special condition number 3 will remain, allowing previously disturbed sections of the inner 50 to be mowed no more frequently than once a year. And also perpetual condition number 45, any debris in the wetland should be removed.
Spady, a second.
All those in favor?
Lundby, aye.
Spady, aye.
Thomas, aye.
Caulfield's aye. 6 Crabapple Lane.
6 Crabapple Lane is an order of conditions that was issued in June of 1993. It's almost as old as my oldest son. The partial certificate of compliance was issued 6 months later, and the commission found that the house and septic was constructed substantially in accordance with the approved plan using the as-built plan approved by the Board of Health. It was a partial cert, and they didn't identify what wasn't completed, but I assume that in that 6-month period, the ground wasn't able to be stabilized. So I can tell you now that in 2020, the ground is indeed stabilized. There are no
I would hope
conditions
so.
to continue in
27
perpetuity.
years later, I can't believe it. Okay, any questions on this?
What took you so long?
Any public comment? Okay. Seeing none, make a motion to issue a certificate of compliance for 6 Crabapple Lane.
Okay, and 72 North Main is the next.
Oh, wait, Andrea.
Hang on. We
Thomas.
need a second and a vote.
Thomas,
Do I have a second?
Yes, Thomas.
All those in favor?
Lundin, aye.
Spady, aye.
Thomas, aye.
Caulfield's aye. Okay, 72 North Main.
Got continued this afternoon.
Okay. Do I need to do anything to continue it, or?
He asked to be continued to the next hearing.
Okay, and we continued 82R Lincoln to August.
At his request.
Okay, let's go to the minutes.
There is somebody in the audience that's interested in hearing the environmental planner updates.
Okay, well, let's just do the minutes first. We'll be done in a second, so we'll get there. So the April 13th, last time Carol had made a request a specific section be included regarding the wetland restoration that was going to get done up near the roadway. So I believe that's included. Carol, that's satisfactory?
Yes. Nice job, Keith. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wasn't, you know, yeah. It does the job.
There is one change on page 5, Keith. I'm sorry I didn't catch it before. In the 3rd paragraph, it starts off with 2 Hills shared. The last sentence of it, it says, the Langhounders are noted the local definition of PVP includes the area 100 from the water line. Just, we need to say 100 feet just to be clear. I know it says 100 feet everywhere else, but let's just do that. So I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes with the minor amendment to page 5 that I just stated.
Lundin, second.
All those in favor?
Lundin, aye.
Spady, aye.
Thomas, aye.
Caulfield's aye. April 27th, anybody have any comments, changes? Seeing none, I'll make a motion to accept the minutes for April 27th as written.
Spady, second. Oh. It was a race.
Thanks.
All those in favor?
Lundin, aye.
Spady, aye.
Thomas, aye.
Caulfield's aye. Okay, environmental planner updates.
We have the Brentwood, 34 Brentwood unauthorized dam structure. At your request at the last meeting, I spoke to their attorney to give an update this week. They have hired an engineering service who is planning on going out within the next week or so. And they expect to have a report of his findings in July.
Do we know who they hired?
No, they did not say.
Okay.
And they did acknowledge in earlier emails that what we're seeking is water levels both above and below the dam to see what impact it might be having.
Right.
So when we say report in July, does that mean July, 8th or July 28th?
Well, because he's already started, I think you can choose.
Okay. So Keith, I'm sorry to do this to you, but what's our meeting dates in July?
You can, this is like the old. Keith's not answering.
He took himself off mute, so maybe he's looking.
Yeah, I got it. I took a screenshot.
The 6th? Oh, no, that's water quality.
No, the
sampling.
13th and the 27th.
Okay, so
Nice
from my
design.
standpoint, clearly I prefer July 13th.
I'm in agreement with you on that one, Rory. Sooner, and then, obviously 27th.
Yeah, agreed. 13th.
And so I would ask that for the 13th, that it be submitted 2 weeks ahead of time by July 1st.
Okay, so I agree. So let's get him to submit the report to you by July 1st, so we can talk about it on July 13th.
I'll pass it on.
So just is it before we move along here? I know there was a member of the public that wanted to say something or to have a question answered about this particular issue. So I know you're off mute, Mr. DeLisi. The one thing I do want to comment here before we get too far into this is that this particular action is between the Conservation Commission and the landowner, and so there's only so much that is going to go on here as far as a discussion is concerned, because we've got upstream neighbors and downstream neighbors that all have the same complaint here about water. Each one thinking the dam is causing the water. So that can't be possible that both of them can be getting the same problem. So, but I will entertain any comments that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did not raise my hand. I just asked by my client to just observe the meeting and report back to her what was said. So
Okay.
I don't have any comments, and I appreciate the board's continuing to look into the matter.
Yeah, as you know, we are attempting to get the applicant to get us to a point where we can make a decision on this.
I understand. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, one other related issue was that I received comments, email comments from a neighbor to the stream located on Kingsley Road, who has lived there for he said quite a long time. I think he said a couple decades, and that he thinks the water in the stream is higher than it's ever been, and that he wondered if it might have something to do with structure downstream, and that if we removed the boards, wouldn't the stream behind his property be better? I actually went to a adjacent property, forgetting what his address was, and I actually found that the vegetation in the section of stream on the upland side of Kingsley Road was much denser in the stream this summer than it was last year. I was there in July last year, and the vegetation that I'm seeing there now is much thicker. That's the only change I've seen. The dam has been in place for longer than the past couple of years, so I'm not sure that it addresses his concern, but I did let him know that that we've got his comment on record, and that when we get the engineering report that we would incorporate his concerns in it. He's not here on the attendee list, but he was wanting to get up to speed on the issue. So a new complaint, same stream.
Yeah, it's a very wet part of town, that's for sure. So. Okay.
That's
so
it.
Anything else, Andrea?
The only other thing is that
That's me.
okay. The only other thing is that the MVP action grant, they had wanted a significant amount of activity done by June 30th. Well, they were gracious enough to recognize that there's a state of emergency, and I was able to transfer all but $6,500 into the next fiscal year, which means that I'm doing my darndest to get a surveyor and wetland professional out there to spend some money this fiscal year, so that we keep the grant active. That's the Sam Wright field removal of the abandoned concrete. And I think I'll have a finalized contract in for review in the next day. So
Okay.
that's that.
Yeah, I mean,
there'll be some monitoring to be done, and one of the contract specifications is that the wetland professional who works on this actually goes out on a training day with anybody from Easton that wants to become a wetland monitor, and I'm hoping that some of the commissioners choose to be that person.
Who's the person that's going out?
If everything goes according to plan, it's likely to be Brad Holmes.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, right. And then we can teach the rest of us.
Brain. That's great.
Yeah, he got recommended by both surveyor companies as the guy to do the work. So that was.
When would that happen, Andrea?
The monitoring will be next fall. We got to get the plants in. Well,
Okay.
no, it'll be next spring. We get the plants in this fall, and it'll be next spring.
Okay.
First growing season.
So I think the next thing on our agenda is a review of the guiding principles. I know that Carol had sent out. You're very noisy, Carol.
Yep, sorry.
So Carol had sent out a proposed change to the principal statement. The
Do you want me to share my screen to put them up on the screen?
If you want, I think everyone has them, but I really like the changes to numbers 1 and 2. I think that they really help enhance what we're trying to accomplish here. I am a little bit concerned that that we've lost that trying to balance the needs of protecting the wetland resources with the applicants and their rights as well. So that's the one thing that's basically been thrown out of this entire process. And I just think that from my standpoint, I think that anything we do in town can't be done absent consideration of the overall impact to how the town, this impacts the town and the taxpayers in town. So that's my only comment about that, is that I'm a little bit concerned that we've discarded that at 100% here. Any comments from anybody?
So Roy, just to recap, you like number 1 and 2, but number 3, you're unsettled with, or is something?
I like the aspect of trying to incorporate climate change into the regulations.
Right.
But the previous there was a previous statement in the guiding principles we used previous to this that was, and I would like to see us beef it up and improve it, but the one aspect of it that I think is missing from here is we're, and I understand that the impact here, you can't argue with what's said. The one thing that's lost out of it is the balance on doing what's incorporating here with what in treating the applicants fairly and equally. My concern is I don't want to create regulations that we then use as barriers to people to do what they are requesting to do, and to use it as a weapon against them. That's my concern.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, when it comes to regulations, it's a tricky thing to revise things, and you can kind of almost run yourself in circles if you don't reread it like 20 times before you put it down on paper. But, you can't, what I've noticed is you got to be, kind of a little bit firm on things, but then also come understanding with the, what is the overall task at hand? What is the overall achievement that you want to get? And you can't like put in clauses that are like what if statements. Like, for instance, like, what if this, impervious surface has PFAS in it or something along those lines? It's like that opens up a whole can of worms. And, I guess number 3, foreseeable and unforeseeable, kind of things like that. I don't know if I could like be comfortable with that. And, it's just like, cause I don't know what's in some things. And I don't know, like, as a consultant, as a, agent for the town of Sharon, there's things that I don't know. And I can't I can't feel like I can do my job right if I can't, lean back on regulations like that.
I think that number 3, and Carol, maybe she can comment on it. My read of number 3 is that we could then have the power to, in proposing regulation changes, to allow us to deny anything for some perceived impact on this. And I'm a little bit concerned about it being that broad. So I can see that.
Yeah, I think 3 is a little bit too powerful for us, and I don't think it's the purpose of our bylaw, nor the Wetlands Protection Act. That's just my opinion, I guess.
I think it's something we should always keep in the back of our heads while we're going through this. But yeah, I don't think it's a little powerful. I agree.
Carol?
Okay, this is Carol. So a couple of things. Rory, you've been saying for quite a while now that you wanted to somehow address climate change.
Yep.
And so this is kind of a nod to you. I think it's something that we're all concerned about. And as I was continuing to read the MACC Buffer Zone Guidebook, I finally had a chance to read the chapter about climate change. I'd like to share a quote from the Environmental Law Institute Planner's Guide to Wetland Buffers for Local Government. This is way back from 2008. Wetland buffers will enable local communities to protect themselves from known hazards associated with global climate change. In some regions, climate change will produce more extreme storm events, increase the number and intensity of floods, and alter the infiltration and conveyance capacity of stormwater and natural wetland systems. I'm going to skip the part about the coast and sea level rise. Climate change will also change the volume and timing of snowmelt. An ordinance that protects wetland buffers will moderate the effects of drought and protect private and public property. So there you know, even way back then, over 10 years ago, they were saying the buffers are super important. So that's why I wanted to include that, so we would, you know, be able to begin to take that into consideration, especially given that our wetland values include but are not limited to, and so here comes climate change into that list.
To speak to John's point, the key phrase in what you just read, I believe, is known hazards from climate change.
Yep.
And as opposed to foreseeable and unforeseeable.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. That's a good point. So I don't have any, you know, I know it's strongly written, but, you know, I feel like, oh my God, we have to, you know, use our wetland resources as best we can, because there's you know, the trends are kind of terrifying when you look at what happened in Australia last year with their fires and then the floods that they had afterwards. Our wetlands are our resilience, a big part of our resilience.
I mean, I'd almost even take it a step further than just say wetlands. I'd say lands within jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission. I mean, because we have other lands that we protect that are not just wetlands. Those are the lands where there's the buffer zone. And, you know, in for instance, the town of Easton, we have additional, you know, stipulations where we protect intermittent streams sometimes with the 200-foot riverfront area. So the lands become protected. So I would probably try to tailor this to saying something with, you know, lands within jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission versus just singling out wetland resource areas.
Great. I'd be happy to make these changes, or just would somebody else like to?
I'm listening. I think I've got it.
Okay. Great. And then Rory, your point about the guiding principle of balance. You're right, I did not include that. And the reason is that my opinion is that the residents of town approved the bylaw. And as far as I know, I haven't read the whole thing, but I don't see any wink or nod saying, you know, we need to protect the landowner's interests here. And I don't see how it's appropriate to bake that into regulations if it's not in the bylaw. I kind of think of it as.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, you know, there are 5 of us, and we're charged with making tough decisions on behalf of about 25,000 people. And so I kind of feel like our own personal biases and opinions are best left to our votes rather than, I don't know, second guessing the voters. And, you know, the people want to appeal a decision, they have a right to do that. So I just feel like the balancing factor is not in the bylaw.
So I'll tell you where that comes from a little bit, and I think that there's a reputation amongst people that have to come before the commission that the regulations are used not in a fair way, and so I think that, and I don't think that's the case with this group of commissioners at all, and I don't think it's been that way in my time, my 3 years on the board. It hasn't been that way either. However, historically, there's a reputation with the commission, for lack of a better term, weaponizing the regulations and bylaws against the applicants. And I'm trying to take that adversarial approach to enforcing the bylaw out of any approach that we have to regulations. And so I want to, as we restructure these regulations, as we make changes to them, I want to look at them in the sense that we will not be the only ones using these regulations. So it won't just be these 5 commissioners. So I want to be clear that when we make the changes, do we believe that another set of commissioners 5 years from now will be able to make the same fair and balanced decisions, or will they twist the regulations in a manner, or will we enable the regulations to be twisted in a manner that can be unfairly used against the applicant? That's the nature of my comment. It isn't about that they have as many rights as anyone else, and that we can't enforce the bylaw. I want to enforce the bylaw. I want to do it fairly so that every applicant that comes before us doesn't feel like they're being punished for some regulation that is or commissioner that's allowed to overreach, a commission that's allowed to overreach. I want to write the regulations in a manner that makes it feasible for future commissions to make the same decisions that we would make, that we think we are making in a fair and balanced manner right now. That's my thought process about that. That's the last 2 times we've been through regulatory changes. That's why that's been in there. It's meant to sort of bring that fair and balanced approach to any changes that we make to it. How could this possibly be used in the future? How could it be interpreted in a manner? Could it be interpreted in a manner that we don't intend it to be? That's really the intent of that particular statement.
Yeah, thank you for that. So, I mean, I understand what you're getting at, and I appreciate, the value you have around that. And, there's no way of knowing what future sets of commissioners would do or want to do. So I kind of feel like that's not within our realm of control.
But I think if we write the regulations in a manner that doesn't allow a commissioner to use the regulation in a manner that is more stringent than what's intended, then we should do that.
Yeah, I think if they're fair and just, then they should be fine. And fair as in has a balance of protecting the wetland resource areas, land within the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission, and also is fair to those people that are trying to promote projects and construct projects, do work. Like simple landowner who wants to build a pool, like we saw tonight. We want to make sure that they have the ability to do that because it's their right. They have a property, but they need to file a permit to do that work, and they have to follow the proper channels and follow all the proper details that this board oversees. And I think that's kind of what we need to, and we didn't talk about climate change or anything about that, which removing trees. I mean, no carbon sequestration. Like there's things like we can talk about that. Like if it's a large scale project, I mean, it's going to be important. And how are they going to keep that carbon footprint going in the future? I think that those are important things to discuss, but it's not something that we typically talk about. As we promote as these projects come in.
Right. And I think part of that challenge for us is commissioners, and I think you may be in a little bit different position than maybe the rest of us as far as educating ourselves on what is possible for us to do in those situations. I think that's part of the challenge as we go down this road and incorporating climate change resiliency into the regulations. Does that? How do we put it in the regulations in such a way that it gets applied in a uniform manner that's based in science?
I mean, we could request, they look into some sort of, when they have to file for a waiver, we ask them to look into some sort of sustainable research in town, whether it's trying to promote, carbon sequestration, climate change increase, that kind of stuff. I think that we can look into, you know, instead of just replacing signs, that could be something that they do, whether it's, you know, replanting trees on conservation land that has been deforested, or something, you know, that we've had in the past that needs some attention. You know, restoring, you know, certain sites that are owned by conservation or town land. I mean, things like that, I think, you know, are definitely, you know, something that we could look at in the future.
Yeah, those are great ideas.
Yeah, great ideas. And, you know, we're not inventing things here. You know, probably other towns in the state have already, you know, started to implement climate change awareness into regulations in some way. There's also the MVP. Andrea, can you talk to us about the MVP?
Well, it was a project plan that was written by the residents and government, local government and regional, speaking to the individual hazards here for climate change in Easton, and projects that would speak both at the short term and the long term to improve our resilience. And forest management, improving our forests was considered a priority issue. Addressing undersized culverts and stormwater recharge, and recognizing that there's going to be more frequent storms of a higher severity. So we do have a lot of the acknowledgement of how climate change, or how the climate changes are going to affect Easton, and we can use that along with some good science that's being developed in the state's MVP clearinghouse of all the latest information. And so, but I think that the key to regulations, if you want them to be clear and concise, is writing performance standard based regulations, not being too prescriptive, because the science is going to change. And when Rory says people might misinterpret what you intend, then you didn't write the regulations clearly. And I think everybody's in agreement that, from what I'm hearing, that you want clear regulations. What are you trying to achieve in very simple language that can't be misinterpreted? That being said, you know, what is it you're trying to say? Long-winded answer. There's a lot of good science on climate resiliency. We understand, we have it written down in the MVP how Easton might most be affected by climates, and we can incorporate those examples into performance standards, as long as it's consistent with the bylaw.
Right. Well said.
So, Andrea, can you incorporate some of this and into another draft, and sort of get us to a point where we think we might be able to all agree on this?
I think I might need to hear from Mike, because I'm not in 3. I heard people say that again, you want clear language, and you want so I can get rid of foreseeable and unforeseeable climate change impacts by speaking more to known hazards, get climate change in there. But I'm hearing 2 people say you want fair and balanced approach. And I think I'm honestly reading 3, and I'm not seeing the verb. I'm not seeing where I'm not seeing, I know that it's strong and powerful, but I don't know I don't see the verb to change. It's a lot of phraseology there. So, I mean, I tend to be more cut and dry, so I'm having trouble. Other than knowing it's powerful.
Right. I would also like to say about where you were saying that kind of the long-term brand of the commission is that it's applicants feel they've been treated unfairly. I'm not sure where that comes from. It is said.
Just telling you, like I said, it's not the last 3 years, maybe not even the last 4 years. The reputation is, and it's, to be honest, it probably is based in fact of applicants not being treated fairly.
It's not just
Right.
Easton either. I will let you know that. Other towns too.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
the status quo of a conservation commission. People are just, they're not in favor. They know, oh, you got a meeting at conservation. Oh, good luck.
Yeah.
You're not gonna get your permit because everybody's gonna say no to that because you're doing work near wetlands. So,
Although I've heard from many consultants that Easton is stronger than most.
yes, they have a great bylaw and regulations.
Right.
Good model.
It's not a weapon.
Good model to look at.
Right. So if people have felt in the further past that it's not fair, I kind of what if they feel like it's not fair because they don't get what they want, where the commission, we have to make hard decisions, and whether it's kind of fair or not, it's not about fairness, it's about the bylaw. I mean, think about
it's about the regulations and how they get. I mean, the regulations is how we enforce the bylaw. So
right, yeah, right. So I mean, and the other thing I think about, in Stefan's absence, he's a new dad, and his new child, also has interest in our wetland values, and I haven't figured out how to sort it out in my mind about people who own land versus people who don't own land, who are just being born, who are too young to vote. To me, that's another aspect of balance. And so I think the fairness has to come from the clear and consistent language. And people don't like the decisions. It's hard. People want to do what they want to do on their land, but it still has to be driven by the bylaw.
And I don't disagree that the town is in favor of. I mean, we have almost 4,000 acres of conservation land in town, and so
we're so lucky.
So I mean, believe me, this town has made a commitment to open space and conservation, and I overall as a town, I believe that that's what we want, and I want, and I think the people on this commission want. And I'm not trying to undo those protections, and I don't want it misinterpreted that I am trying to make it easy for people to fill in wetlands or do whatever they want near vernal pools and everything else. But what I do want is, as John said, that I want it to be fair and balanced, and I want them to understand when they come before us what that means, so that they don't get surprised at what's being requested of them. And I think we make a lot of requests of applicants to change plans and make them better. And I think at the end of the day, we have a better project that comes out of it because we do. And so I simply want, as we approach the regulations, I think we need to keep in the back of our mind that the way we talk about projects and the way we work with applicants on projects is the way we want future commissions to need to work with applicants on projects, and to apply the regs in the same ways that we're thinking, and not make them in a manner that makes it easy for them to make either less stringent or more stringent application of those regulations. And so I'm simply looking for a fairness approach to this, so that that it's not simply a matter of what we're trying to accomplish here, but do it in a balanced way that doesn't make it impossible for someone to put a above ground pool in their level backyard. So I mean, which we could write them in such a way that becomes a problem, and I don't want that to happen. You know, I want applicants to be able to put additions on their homes, and I want applicants to be able to put in pools, and I want, you know, I want applicants to be able to build a home on a buildable lot. It doesn't mean they should be able to come in and fill in a wetland to do so.
So I think that the power of this statement in Carol's draft might be capitalize on the wetland resources potential for these long-term, you know, for this climate change impact, for these long-term benefits. So do we want to capitalize on the wetland resources potential, or do we want to protect the wetland resources?
I mean, I think that's how the Wetland Protection Act, it's called the Wetland Protection Act. So protect, I think, is the appropriate language there to use, not capitalize.
And I'm looking at the purpose of in the bylaw. The purpose of the bylaw is to protect the wetlands, water resources, adjoining land by controlling activities deemed by the commission likely to have a significant or cumulative effect on wetland values, including but not limited to blah, 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 blah. They're not capitalizing on them. They are protecting the jurisdictional lands by controlling activities. That's as strong as you can, and that might be less strong than capitalize, but controlling activities might not be, if you want that in your guiding principle, that's controlling activities means you're prohibiting things. It could mean you're prohibiting things.
So one thing, we've spent about a half an hour on this, which is about, I should have started off with it. I think we've spent more than half an hour on this at this point. And I just want to be a little bit careful of all of our times. I've been trying to keep these meetings to 2 hours. We're at 2 hours, 45 minutes right now. And so I think I'm about at the end of my level of
my attention span is fading, just so you all know.
See, I can't even finish the sentence. So, you know, I think that I would like to maybe take another stab at this and try and get us to another draft of it at our next meeting, which is June 24th. I just want to remind people it's a Wednesday. It's because on June 22nd is annual town meeting, which I believe is being held at Stonehill. I'm just letting you guys, so June 24th, we'll take another stab at this. I think we've had some good discussion here. I think it's important for us to do this exercise so that when we get down to actually working on the regulations, we don't lose sight of what we're, as a group, that we're trying to accomplish. I think it'll actually make the process go smoother once we get there. At least that's the way it's worked previously. I know we spend a little bit of time trying to figure out what we want to say in these, but I think it's important for us as a group to discuss these principles and what are guiding principles for these regulatory changes, even before we get into what regulatory changes.
I'll give it another stab. Would you like me to send it to you
Yes.
prior to the agenda going out, so you have more time to think about it?
Yeah, if you give me a draft too, I'll take a look at it, and maybe give it a once over, and then we can circulate that prior to the agenda going out if we can. So
Okay.
Okay. Anything else anyone has? I don't have anything at all that didn't come up tonight. So.
Oh, did you? I think that there might be news from our. I think there might be news from our clerk.
Oh, is there any news from our clerk?
No, but there will be next meeting.
Okay.
Oh, he wants to wait till next meeting.
Well, that's not
Give
fair.
his notice, guys.
What?
He and if Keith wants to be gracious about this, that's fine. But the next meeting is his last meeting. He it's tough times in town budget season, and he decided to take one for the team.
So that is
Very sad for me.
Very
For
some of
you.
the saddest news I've heard certainly in the past several weeks, and we've
Well, it's been fun. It's been fun working with all of you.
Keith,
Same to you, Keith.
You are a true asset, Keith, and you will be missed. And I
Thank you.
appreciate everything you do for us, for sure.
Keith, are you looking for a new job?
No.
Good, right on, Keith. Have fun and enjoy your time off.
Yes, that's exactly what I plan on doing.
Oh,
Thanks anyway.
we're gonna miss you.
Thanks, Joe.
He will be here for the next meeting, but not only 2 days after that. Only a day and a half after that.
A day and a half.
Yeah.
You get all the filings done as soon as they get done, Keith.
I'll try.
Yeah. Right. Well, good for you.
Thanks.
Good for you.
Yes.
Sorry to steal your thunder. You're going to have to go through this twice, Keith, but I did want them to know ahead of time.
Okay. I think that's it. I will entertain another motion.
Spady, a second.
You have to make the motion.
I'll do the
first.
motion. Jeez, I can't do
Motion to adjourn.
Screw this up every time.
I second that.
There you go.
All those in favor?
Lundin, aye.
Spady, aye.
Thomas, aye.
Caulfield's aye. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.
Thank you all.
Very productive. Love
Take
it.
care, everybody. Bye.
Take care. See ya.
Thank you.
Good night. Take care.
Bye-bye.